Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're here for it's Scotty McLeod, the referee from Oztag, and done a lot of tours in New Zealand. Recently, come off a pretty successful coaching effort in Oztag over in New Zealand.
Look, I wouldn't say it was successful from our team's point of view. I'm wearing St George Oztag top today, and just last time I saw you, I went to New Zealand. We had a 5-match test series with the men's 30s against New Zealand, and
You went pretty well.
we won 2 and lost 2 and drew 1 match, and then the whole series was decided on a
Field goal
on an extended play, 5-on-5 players, and we lost to New Zealand. We were the only team out of 14 teams in the Australian camps that came away without the Trans-Tasman trophy. But look, I'd rather lose a Trans-Tasman than a World Cup next year, so revenge is short-lived.
Well done, Scotty, and congratulations, mate. How are your tips been going lately? You've hit the lead in the Monster Cup by 2, but it's such an unpredictable comp. You laughed at me when I tipped the Warriors and the Dolphins.
Yeah, look, you sort of insinuated that the Dolphins were putting it together.
Yeah.
Storm's on the decline. They certainly look like a team with a lot of harmony, the Dolphins, at the moment, so they're really enjoying their football. But I got a cheer for that for all the punters that put that $4.58 bid on the Cowboys a few weeks back against the Panthers.
And what about last week?
Well, they beat the Raiders, they beat the Panthers, and the Cowboys were specials. That was my hot crystal ball tip. I said put 100 on them at $4.58.
I wish I would have.
Great value.
Yeah. Now, did you back any of mine last week? I got 7 out of 8 and 3 doubles each game.
There are a couple of doubles there I backed.
Thank you, sir.
Look, I don't steer near your Newcastle team in any way at the moment, but we'll get to that. We'll get to the Knights.
Because I knew it was going to be a bad day. I didn't back that game. That was why I didn't get 8 from 8.
And apologies very early to the Atlas Funts, Parramatta. I did say that I would never, ever tip them.
Look into the camera, because I watched it last night. You said, I'm giving you one more chance, but after today, I'm never going to tip them again. So what do you say to your fans out there from Epaw?
Look, I apologise for leading you astray, but I did tip Parramatta last week. I thought with the return of Moses, and again, we'll talk about Moses' performance, it was
phenomenal.
It was absolutely outstanding, and surely he's got to be first choice for the New South Wales halfback over Cleary.
He's got to be. He's got to be.
Has to be. So we'll get to that, but where would you like to start?
I'd like to start with a gripe and then go through the stats of why the team has won so well. I've got some amazing stats here that'll blow you away.
Mm-hmm.
But my biggest gripe is from the Newcastle game. Don't tell me that those bunker funts did not interfere with the Fletcher Sharp's first try, which could have possibly changed the momentum swing of the game.
Absolutely.
He committed to the tackle. Did Nico Hines not commit to the tackle? And this is what they're all doing now. Oh, I can't get to him. He wouldn't have got to him anyway because he committed to the tackle. And Ashley Klein said that you've already committed. And then he's overruled by the bunker funts.
Yeah,
where's the game going if this continues on in a big match, say a knockout semi-final or a prelim? It can't keep going. Where Ashley Klein was right there and said, "No, Nico, you committed to the tackle." Nico got overruled.
Nico committing to that tackle was like someone copping a kick in the shins in an EPL soccer game or football game, as they call it, but and falling to the ground and hoping they're going to get a penalty. And I did take great sense of purpose in listening to all the press conferences of all the coaches.
Yeah.
I've got coaches saying, I don't know what a hip drop is anymore.
Yep.
I don't know what a head high is anymore.
Yes.
Right? Now, there seems to be a lot of sin bins, but there's also a large number of players that are hitting the head that actually it's only going on report.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between going on report and then getting 10 in the sin bin for something that is even less significant? So they don't know what the hip drop is. They don't know what a head high or contact with the head is. They certainly don't know anything about the obstruction rule and how that's being the terminology in the bunker. And there seems to be a lack of consistency or cohesion in what the bunker and the referee are saying. You would surely think that the bunker is there to only support the referee's on-field decision. If we want to go back to a referee having control of the game, then let them be made accountable for it. They're closer to the action. You can't slow it up frame by frame by frame.
Yeah, which they are.
They're looking for every reason not to score a try.
And the punters are suffering as well. But the teams, that could have easily changed the game. When you're talking about confidence.
Yeah, I've got to wear the changing of the game. My Broncos played the Warriors on the weekend.
There's a couple of bad decisions there.
That referee called forward pass. Now, he was in line with that.
Shit. I think it was
judges that have passes that are 5 and 10 metres forward and they're not calling it off. This guy miraculously is in line with it. How the hell that was flat? But I'll live with that. Human error.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, human error. I don't want to see the bunker. I don't want to see the bunker come in and make him feel like I want to see him have an internal review next week, sit with the director of referees and go, you know what, mate? You're in the right position, but you made a mistake there, mate. And let him then be wary of the fact that when he gets a decision like that where he thinks it's 50-50, it's going to go to the attacking side and he's going to allow the run of play, and that way we get better flow and a better game, right? Yeah. Because that pass, that cost the Broncos the game.
It could have.
It did.
Well, it did. Yeah,
it did.
But okay, that's all right. We know you've got a big horse's head underneath that chest. But yeah, I agree. Look, it's bad that we're having to talk about this, but that did my head in because then all the momentum swung to the Sharks, right? And this team is struggling. They're missing 4 to 5 of their best forwards, including one of the best in the game, Dylan Lucas, and they just can't. They're playing like they're B or C graders. Now you can't do that against a fully blessed Sharks team with all their massive forwards in there.
Yeah, I hope you're not insinuating that the referees need to be soft on Newcastle because you've got injuries.
No, I'm not saying that.
Those teams that are shorter players.
I'm not saying that.
They put there's less beyond doubt, right? The better your side is, the more you put beyond doubt, you then place the referee in a decision where he is out of the equation and it's pretty easy peasy, right? When you've got, like Parramatta have, those 50-50 calls, as soon as Moses came in, a lot of structure, you put the referee out of the game.
I love the comic you put. The comic you put it on Facebook was a classic, where he was patting the ref going, can we have a few more decisions going on?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Look, you know, at the end of the day, they're professional footballers, and you'll hear coaches say, look, we've got one out, one in, they're into the structure, and they should be doing the same thing.
But 1 second, Scotty. This game, after the weekend, with all how many forwards scored? Countless amount, right? Countless amount.
Plus 60%.
At least. Now, don't tell me Newcastle wasn't disadvantaged in the middle of the park against a giant. You want to go for them? Talatai, Aiden Fanua-Blake. How do you stop that? Origami.
Well, it's origami.
I'm waiting for it.
Look,
which brings me to the dumbest play of the month. Did you see Phoenix Crossland come out early? Didn't tell his players he was doing it and tried to grab Nico Hines. Nico Hines just went
shocking
straight to Kafusi, left a massive gap for Kalen Ponga to try and tackle him. Absolutely. What were you going to say, mate, about backing up the
I was just going to say, just in regards to the forwards, I've noticed in watching all the highlights that you know the sweeping attacking plays?
Yes.
And
second phase out the back.
I think the defences kind of adjusted to that. I saw a turn last week where there was a lot of short passing and big, robust forwards hitting a direct line, running over opposition when they get in that red zone. And there are a lot of tries scored on the edges of the ruck.
Yes.
Where they just hammered them, big blokes over small blokes. And that direction is far more direct. And I thought there was a bit of a change in the game this week.
Yep.
And that helped a player who we've been bagging and has now come a bit under the radar, and a bit under the radar his team is Nico Hines and the Sharks, because they look pretty good on the weekend. I'm not convinced because they were playing Newcastle, and Newcastle are not one of the strongest sides in the competition. Let's put it bluntly.
Especially not this year.
They've got a lot of work to do, and their coach is going to be under a bit of pressure.
He's under the blowtorch, man, and a lot of the experts are saying that they're in a race for the wooden spoon, unfortunately, at this early stage.
Look, my biggest
you're right about the Tigers, though. You were
well. It's still hard.
Apart from the Galvin incident, you were right about the Tigers. That they're still going to struggle.
Mm-hmm. They're 3 and 4. They're 8 points, I think, with a bye in there.
Yeah.
But look, my brain snap for the weekend was from Taruva for the Tigers. How he grabbed that Parramatta player and threw him to the ground. Like,
can I say something to interject with what you're saying? Was it that stupid post that he did online? Because he seemed to have this anger because people might have been yelling stuff out at him. Hey, yobbo.
No excuse. You're under the spotlight. You're under the media. You don't walk the street with, T-shirts saying obscenities or against...
And you've got this level of aggression.
And you're going to share that level of aggression in public under the spotlight of the media. And mind you, it's his job.
That's right.
They think it's just footy. Go out, play with your mates.
Yeah.
But it's your job. Unlike the days where you had Johnny Raper and Graham Langlands and that, like they had a job and then they came and played footy and had a beer. And these guys are employed in their time off to train off that 80 minutes of footy.
Yep.
Go to hospitals and see disabled kids and encourage because they're peers, schools to the public. And that's what they get paid for. And part of that is their obligation to create that image for the sport. So I got his aggression was out of control, right? There's an old saying.
It was a bad time of the game too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It may have cost the swing in that game because
for sure.
For me, there's the old saying, he's a dog.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? To call someone a dog is when they've done a really low life act, like a bite or a scratch or a finger up the, or whatever. But look, at the end of the day, that was a bit of a dog act.
Yeah, I think so. So your player of that possibly changed the game, I put it to you last night.
Yeah, well,
what was the play that changed the game? Mine, just before you shoot off, was the 40-20 from Moses. Well, and the kick, which bounced into what's his name, the guy that's sort of here and there. He ended up getting that perfect bounce and had a backspin on it, and it just popped up into his hands. It was just a perfect time to do it on zero tackle.
It was a great game. I thought that was early on in the game. I thought if I looked at a player who I felt was the best player on the field, but he also had a good clutch moment, was Josh Adokar. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. He twinkled toes down the sideline, scored his first try. He set up the try when he threw that nice inside ball across two Tigers defenders. And then the third try he scored. But it was when the Tigers were attacking the line and he took that intercept. It was a 2-on-1 and he didn't run the length of the field. But that was a clutch play. That, for me, was the clutch play of the week.
Yep.
And
the tiptoe down the sideline.
Oh, his balance was just he can find the line. Look, he's not one of those robust wingers or anything. I mean,
I've still got the speed there, bro.
I've met him personally. He's no taller than me, and he'd be lucky to be 80, 90 kilos.
He's got that explosive power.
And we'll get on to explosive power just to remind me on Mr. Sharp for the Newcastle Knights. I watched a lot of his game on the weekend, so let's get on to the first game, perhaps.
Get on to it, mate, and we'll go through this review. It was Manly, and just missing out on St. George was that goal, the goal from the sideline that Garrick missed that could have put it into golden point time.
Yeah, look, clutch moments.
2018, St. George.
Well, anytime try scorers, I'm always going to pick Jason Saab and Tyrell Sloan and Jacob Little's.
Big game.
Jacob Little's always a good banker. Look, I thought he's brought Jacob Little on at the right time to score that try to win them the game. But I think the clutch moment that won the Dragons that game was Tyrell Sloan's swooping up on that loose ball and running the length of the field. So from that point of view, I wouldn't get too excited. The Dragons, I tipped them as their first win in 17 years at Brookvale Oval. And they did everything they could to lose the game, and Manly did everything they could to present the game to the Dragons, and the Dragons fell over the line.
One of the worst games you've seen from Cherry Evans?
Yeah. Oh, look, he was executing passes. He was 1 and 2 and 3 metres away from players and wanted to drill the ball either into the turf or in between the ears of the players. And is
the pressure still on him from the media, or his decision to leave Manly, or people yelling from the crowd?
Maybe it's an effect of what Turbo has on that team. I think he's got to make everything happen. I think there's a lot of pressure on DCE. I think he's pretty level-headed. I don't think he'd be letting his football go to risk. I just think they're lacking a bit of direction there with the Sea Eagles. They've got a fair few injuries.
Here's an interesting stat, though, Scotty. 389 tackles to St George and only 329 made for Manly. However, this is the clutch, as you said. 18 missed tackles St George, 25. And these tackles are during important parts of the match. And Tavago got 51 most tackles, and one of your favourite players, Toby Katzman. He's got to have a future, surely.
Yeah.
Is he possibly state of origin bench?
Not at this stage.
No, but maybe next year?
Perhaps. I'm not. I wouldn't bank on him that quick. I'm not one for wants to put too much pressure on these young kids. I mean, look at.
But he's got a lot of potential.
Well, yeah.
So he's top tried tackle nearly every week, brother.
So is Lockie Galvin, and they're already talking $1 million man and going to clubs and fighting. And look what destruction. And again, I don't want to spend any more time on this podcast talking about player managers and how they destroy clubs and sending letters to other clubs. And I've heard so many different sides to that story. And
NRL need to change it, correct?
They've got to do something about it.
They've got to do something.
So they've got to do something about having a control, because at the moment, those player managers, and unfortunately it's one that has a bad association with Benji Marshall, and it's destroyed the club on many, many levels.
And it's going to continue because now we've got court case involved, possibly.
Yep.
Can we get to the reason also why Manly are lacking without Turbo? He's coming back soon. That's got to make a difference if he comes back.
Yeah, it will, but for how long? The guy is so brittle. He's like a chandelier hovering over marble floor, ready to shatter. Again, like Latrell Mitchell, I mean, they're quality players, but how much of the season do you get of them?
Yeah.
And is he healthy at the right time? Look, again, they just seem a little bit misguided at the moment.
And we haven't seen Evans have a bad game for a while.
No, not really. I think he's pretty consistent.
To me, that was one of his worst games.
Yeah, I wouldn't be blaming DCE at this point in time. He'll still be the Queensland captain. And
my man who got us the nice double in the first one was Tolatol Kola. Isn't he a great centre?
It was an awesome try. Plenty of potential. Big, strong. But it was, it was one that Manly were rude. That they let go, and the one that the Dragons were probably more relieved than anything.
Where do you see the Dragons going forward, brother?
I think the longer the season goes, I think the Dragons look a little bit fatigued. If you're going to carry a big side like them, they do get fatigued sort of towards the beginning of that second half, end of the first half, in the middle of the game where they start to lose it.
Origin, they might do all right, though. They're not going to lose too many players.
No, they won't. They won't. But I think St George I think they're going to benefit each week. I think. Okay. Yeah, I think they're. I did tip them to make the top 8, and I think they're still on the cusp of that. I still think they're in good stead for that.
Speaking of the next game, Scotty, and who you didn't tip to make the 8th, because I watched the very first episode last night, you didn't pay mention to Canterbury. In our first ever episode, well, you didn't pay. How much respect do you pay for them now?
I give them some respect, but not a total amount. And I'll tell you the reason.
It's 32-0 on Good Friday
against the South Sydney side, right? That lacked depth, has got injuries. Let's just have a look at a few things, right? And let's talk about the Dogs, because I'm happy to play the song "Who Let the Dogs Out." not the best singer in the world. But let me tell you, I wanted to play that this week because credit due, your 14 points. The Dogs 6-1 bye and undefeated, and you're all world beaters, right? But let's just have a look at the world beaters because I've been complaining about the Sharks having a really healthy draw, right, leading into their result making the top 8. In the first round, right, the Doggies, they faltered and let St George score 20 points in the second half and nearly got run down. And they only beat St George 28-20 when St George were trying to put their team together. So they had a completely new side roster, right? So that's not really, to me, a creditable win. They were expected to win that, right? Then they beat the Titans. They beat the Titans 40-24 at home, right? Now, are the Titans a premiership threat? Not many people are going to say that. The next week after that, they've played the Atlas Funts and beat them only 16-8, right? Now, up until then, Parramatta, they were 6 losses oncoming, and they only beat them 16-8, right? Then, in round 4, right, they've beaten the Sharks. I will give that a creditable win. It was at Shark Park 20-6. That was a real strong focus on their defence, right? They've beaten the Sharks. In round 5, right, they beat Newcastle Knights 20-0. Now, how good are the Knights going now? Right?
Oh.
To gauge their defence, yes, the defence is good, but let me tell you, how good are the Knights going? Right? And you can explain to the fans how good the Knights are going. And then the Doggies get a bye, right? So then they get a bye, and then they come up against the lacklustre South Sydney side, who's got all their players out and have to make multiple changes, and they win 32-0. Now, next week they're going to play the Broncos, right?
Is it this?
Yeah. So this Thursday, the Dogs have got the Broncos.
Tomorrow.
Right?
Yep.
Then the Dogs play the Titans again, who they've already beaten. And then the Dogs will play the Raiders at home. And then the week after that, they've got the Dolphins. Now, if they win 3 out of their next 4 games when they've got to play the Broncos up in Brisbane, the Raiders in Canberra,
not easy,
and the Dolphins, who are on fire.
They're on fire.
Right? If they can win a majority of those games, I will say the Dogs are a premiership threat. Now, they've got the points in the bank. They're lucky, right? They've got the points in the bank. But I'm still not convinced with Storm and the way the Raiders are going, with the potential of the Broncos, the potential of the Panthers, and the Dolphins, and some of these bigger and better teams. And we know Sharks are chokers. Their only big win that I've ascertained out of all of that is their 20-6 win against the Sharks early on in the season. I think they've still got a lot of work to do. Their defence is fantastic.
They know that.
I listened to his...
They've admitted that. But look at the stats, brother, from the weekend. 38 missed outs. Maybe they were made to look better. 19, only 16, 19 for Canterbury. 38, so twice as much.
Q in the rack stuff, and certainly not something that is identified by a Wayne Bennett coach team either.
Tackles made 418 South and only 307. You can't hold the ball. That's what's going to happen. You're going to get gassed.
Absolutely.
Marmazelis, he's an absolute workhorse. You've got to take your hat off to him. 54 tackles, top tackler again. Are you impressed with Jacob Preston? I am. I think he's got a big future.
Yeah.
41 tackles there.
Yeah, and his work rate, and he got rewarded with the try just after half time, which...
Thank you.
You know, it was... yep, and did you bank on Bronson Cherry? Because he's one of your favourites, as I know. But
we saved on him.
You could have tipped anyone in South Sydney and just lost.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, we did need to get the 4th and 5th double. I was relying on South to score, but they didn't even look likely. But didn't you think Latrell playing a 5-out was way at it? It doesn't suit him.
No. You've
got to put him back where Jai Gray is, haven't you?
You don't want to work. Latrell Mitchell's not a worker, right?
Fair enough.
Oh, look,
used to have being a bit of a semi-Bunnies fan, used to be a Latrell Mitchell fan.
Oh, look, I thought
you and Connors.
Well, if I look at an extended career,
yeah,
how many people would choose Greg Inglis for his work rate and his involvement over Latrell Mitchell? If you had,
probably a lot.
Yeah, I'd say so. There's no comparison,
pound for pound.
And pound for pound, they're probably similar type of players. I just think Latrell Mitchell's nothing in the class of Greg Inglis. And look to another stat which was amazing in that game. I can't believe since 1938, was it, when 38 when the Doggies came in, that they'd never won games back to back, keeping a team scoreless.
Yeah,
all those years.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Even back to the Willie Mason era when they won a couple of comps.
Oh,
I'm surprised. Yeah,
it was a very surprising stat. So look, they've got the points in the bank, and that's the key. Come State of Origin,
you mentioned that. You mentioned that.
What is happening though is teams are winning 2 games, losing 1, losing 2 games, winning 3. It's highly congested at the moment.
Yep.
That will put a lot of heat on those games that you need to win through State of Origin if you are having a high complement of players in the State of Origin teams.
Yes.
Obviously, it doesn't matter whether if Doggies lead the comp by 6 points come State of Origin, they can afford 3 losses and still lead the comp. That's a really good position to be in.
But who's going to get it a run out of the Bulldogs side that you think for Origin? Oh, yeah, Crichton's one of them, right? Correct.
Crichton's definitely one. I don't know. I don't know if Burton will get a run.
He may bench at best, yeah?
Yeah, he may.
Yeah.
He may. So, look, their side's going to stay very closely intact.
Yeah.
But, look, credit to the Dogs. They are leading the competition, but I still don't think they're world beaters. I think they've had an easy draw. I think they've played the minnows of the competition.
Are you saying that Brisbane have got a very good chance of causing a boil over there and stopping the undefeated?
My heart says yes.
No, your head. I'm asking your head.
My head says this game I can't split. I think the Broncos are good value at $2.50.
Okay.
It is over in Brisbane, and if it's a dry track, I think this is the game that probably the Broncos have been thinking.
They're not good. They're not good. Yeah, but they're not good wet muddies, are they?
No. No, not unless your pass gets called forward when it's flat.
Question to a fan that you are: Reece Walsh limping through most of that game. Did he not make it even more vulnerable by staying on there? He looked like he couldn't even chase some of the people that bust through the line with the Dogs.
Yeah, look, he scored 1 try. He had a hand in a couple, and everyone's going to crucify him for a mistake. Everyone's now talking about Ben Hunt when he knocked the ball on at the grand final in 2015 and how that's mentally affecting him. I don't think it is. I think it's everyone keeps bloody well reminding him of it. Players don't need to put it behind them. We'll get to that game because that was later on, but let's get to the next one. It was Dolphins 42. Melbourne Storm 22. What was the halftime score, Scotty? It was 16-12. Wasn't it pretty much close to 16-2 at one stage? But you sensed Dolphins were at least going to score a try before halftime. I did anyway. Yeah, look, because I did warn you that it could be a big upset here. Yeah, you did. And look, I don't think Craig Bellamy even saw it coming. I don't think anybody saw it coming and this is a... I'm not having a personal attack, but after the game, our man PC said free money. Now, I don't know what bet he put on, right? But there wouldn't have been too many people putting bets on the Dolphins to score 40 unanswered points and declare it as free money or easy money. I don't think anyone expected that, and it was hammer time, wasn't it? Well, I think because we said we love Herbie Farnworth. I think he was just suggesting that you guys have got some free money because he knew that was our banker. Yeah. You and I are one of the biggest Herbie Farnworth fans in his fan club. Yeah, and I don't think he gets utilised enough. But geez, he had a great game. They're putting it together, the Dolphins. Yeah. Geez, they got some giant forwards on and off the bench. Mr. Kerr, the biggest giant going around since Solomon in the Melbourne side. But look at Jermaine Osako. You'd nearly rate him as the best goal kicker, would you not? From the sideline? Well, he's been the leading point scorer last year, and I'm not sure if he was the year before, but he's got some points in him. And if the Dolphins keep scoring tries, but their defence is coming together a little bit better than what the Titans would be. We'll get to the Titans because AJ Brinson's always been a great attacking team, but they can't defend. The Dolphins, look, I think the resilience in their defensive structure is starting to hold hands now and understand what their roles are. Mm-hmm.
Cody Nicarima, you're a big fan?
Cody Nicarima, big fan.
The little flick?
Yeah, brilliant. Along the edges of the ruck there, they started to get really tired. Of course, they did not have Harry Grant out there. He might have blocked a lot of those holes.
Did I not mention that at the start of the game when you rang me? I said, are you still tipping them with Grant missing? Because every time I do the review, it's Grant 54 tackles, 50 tackles, 52 tackles.
And it's where they beat them through those holes.
And it's they get a better line. It's a little bit like Parramatta when Dylan Walker when he's on there. They got that structure, and then when Moses comes on there, they got a perfect attacking line.
Look, it was a phenomenal effort from the Dolphins, and looking at the Dolphins' try scorers, well, geez,
they've been scored. Lemuela's come on and scored 3 or 4 weeks in a row now.
Yep,
he's a giant, but low compact.
Ray Stone,
speedy.
And this is where you were talking about a lot of the forwards and in that area.
Yeah.
Hammer didn't score a try.
No.
Jermaine Osako didn't score a try. Herbie did, and Herbie's been struggling to score tries of late.
Because people are now using these forwards for what they're good for. And what they're doing, all the back line are taking those hit-ups, those early hit-ups, correct?
Yep.
And then the forwards aren't as gassed from all the tackling. And bang! Look at Hudson Young over the weekend. He's only got to have 5 metres off a standing start. Now, Bobby Lindner, if he'd come off a 15-metre start, right? And he was unstoppable. But
so now we're going
unstoppable.
So now what you're saying is we're going to go back to the days where
I think so.
We had, and when we were some mad St George Dragons fans, used
Graham Wynn.
Robert Stone, John Jansen, right
on the burst,
or Roy Ferguson, all these guys, and the one thing that they didn't lack had lacked, that is now a priority in our game is offloads.
Yes.
Okay. So Arthur Beetson used to bow down and have 3 on his back and do the little under the arm stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what made him infamous. Look, I think that's where the game's going now is the bash and barge. So teams, to combat that, if I was the coach, I'd be getting line speed off the line away from the red zone. Yep. So I'd be surging up really, really quick on my line speed.
Yes.
That puts a little bit of hesitation in your defence.
But Canterbury have been doing that. Well, a lot of high pressure in their defence.
Very effective. And they did that in the last 5 minutes of the game. They shut out South Sydney 3 times in the last 10 minutes. So they're very, very proud of their line, and the Doggies are very good in that respect. Look, Xavier Coates is one of my bankers always for the Storm, and also Pappenhausen. You bank the two together. A majority of the time they're going to score 20 points in a game. But the Storm, they've got some problems. That's a couple of losses now that really concern me. To score 22 points and allow the Dolphins to score 40 unanswered points is unheard of.
Yeah.
And I have very rarely seen Craig Bellamy with
no like that. But he was like that at the end of the game.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that amount of stress on his face. Usually he'll just throw something at the brick wall and walk off in disgust or leave early. But
well, they're the different coaching styles. Look, they asked in the press conference, they asked Wayne Bennett when they lost 32-0, is that something that you just shelf and push aside and throw it and discard it and get on for next week? And he goes, no. We still have to get something out of this game.
Yeah.
Craig Bellamy, I think he'd be putting this one behind him and saying, forget that, restart, look at the basic elements of their game.
Mm-hmm. Can I give you some of the stats, Scotty?
Absolutely.
Missed tackles will kill you. 38 for Storm and only 25 for Dolphins.
Well, it's highly irregular.
That's unlike them.
It's highly irregular that they would do that. And again, with Harry Grant in there, he would have tidied up 30.
Absolutely. Tackles made, 326. Melbourne, Dolphins, 273. That's going to gas you.
Yeah, it'll gas them. It'll gas them, especially when they're running around, like a revolving door trying to catch them quick Dolphins players, because it was a bit of a revolving door. You saw what Cody Nicarima did to him.
But how good do you think Katoa is as a young halfback?
There's some massive raps on him. Again, I'm one like Lucky Calvin.
Because he had the kicking meters here on the stats.
But it's where he kicks and just his relaxed state of composure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He's got a massive future this year.
It's like maturity that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, very relaxed. He's got he makes the game look like it's just running a little bit. He just sees the game. It's something Andrew Johns did, Langer and those guys, Ricky Stewart. They just saw the game at a slower pace, had more time, and he's a remarkably composed young man. For a man at his age, to see him in 4 or 5 years, he could be the best half in the game. Could be. Because they're under a lot of pressure now. We very rarely let these young kids become the players. They're not $1 million players now. Go out, enjoy your footy. That's what he is. But too much talk, it's going to put pressure on him.
Yeah, well, it's a professional game now, and a super professional game that they're trying to expand. So, but there's pressure all over the place. May I ferment your ego? Pappenhausen, 165 most run meters, and Herbie Farnworth, 161.
Well, I thought Pappenhausen, with the change of the colour in his hair, it was like Samson and Delilah. If you change the colour of your hair or you cut your long hair, it's all of a sudden going to weaken you. But he actually looked. Maybe he came under the radar because he didn't stand out like a lighthouse. Like, he's got that blonde hair. That was crappy. I mean, everyone could see him from a mile away. But
so you think he should do what Kickout did? Went black went brown for a while.
Yeah, you got to do something.
turn the traffic lights off. Let's get to the next game then. 20 Warriors. Oh, what a game this was in the wet. I know you were telling me earlier in the week that it's going to be Broncos possibly 13 plus, but I said to you, man, it's in the wet and it's over there. You should know, being a second son of New Zealand, how hard it is for any side to go there in Auckland and beat Warriors, even with a lot of their good players missing.
Yeah, look, if I see 3 teams that are always a bogey for the Broncos, it's the Raiders, the Warriors and the Storm.
Yeah.
And the Warriors, they were exceptional over there. It was a real good win for them. It's something that the Broncos...
Gutsy win.
Oh, it was. Look, I'm not going to blame the try. I don't think we deserved to win, but it was certainly gutsy.
Can I ferment our egos here as a duo and tipsters, right? Curb Capewell. How freaking good was he to get that ball? That was state of origin stuff, mate. Not many forwards can still have that pace. Yeah, he's lost the pace from 4 years ago when he represented Queensland, right? But he still had the nous with Metcalf to get that ball out. And many forwards would have done that.
He's one of those.
Maybe beats him.
He's an elite player. I put him in the same class as Yo-Yo from the Penrith side.
Definitely.
Definitely. What Capewell does.
Effort as well.
Yeah, and I remember a player that came from the Broncos. I know it's sorry fans, Broncos, but when the Warriors had a huge impact, they had a guy called Kevin Campion.
Yeah, I remember him.
The Broncos. And
tough.
Yeah,
tough
just
player.
those guys that give you week in, week out what you expect. And Capewell, he really has solidified and leads by example.
He never goes on there and gives you a Teddy Goodwin. Teddy Goodwin, a Jubilee, if he was digging his toes in, kicking his toes in, if they'd been scored against,
given up.
He'd give up. He'd give up. So what you're saying is these players that have got all that experience as well, and they're day in, day out, 100% players.
Yep. No, Capewell absolutely destroyed us. When you look at
worth his weight in gold.
When you look at Pat Carrigan and Payne Haas, again, the moment they spoke about them guys, the pressure was on, and now they're probably not delivering as well as they would. I've got a friend who I'll shout out to, Gabe Gaucho in Brisbane.
Gabe Gaucho?
Gabe. And look, he said to me in relation to the Broncos, he was not completely satisfied with Madge Maguire as the coach.
Okay.
And he's still not satisfied with Madge.
Okay.
He's got a lot of tools at his disposal there. Ezra Mam's yet to come back. Reece Walsh will be out for 6 weeks. Maybe that's a reset for Reece Walsh to get away from all the media and then all of a sudden come back. And then the heat will be on Ezra Mam because of what he did. And he's obviously been prepared to come back and make sure that it's not going to affect him no matter what the media says.
Who did Billy Walters replace, mate?
Corey Pace.
Corey Pace, okay, because Billy Walters started, and then so that threw me up because that was really a late change, right?
Yeah.
Because I like Billy Walters because he's very dangerous from dummy half. So who scores the first try?
Billy Walters.
Billy Walters. Oh, damn you! I was like 9-2 or something.
Who's our banker? Jesse Arthurs.
Well, yeah, Jesse Arthurs, but my banker here was, as I told you, I'm a big fan of Luke Metcalf.
Yep. And
he wins the game with a 50-metre penalty goal. Yes, they did have a tailwind, but that's pretty gutsy kick, brother. After you've only got 1 from 4.
You're going to bag Reece Walsh for that, kicking out in the full against the tailwind. And he kicks it out on the full.
Yeah, how much did he put in onto that? You could see it really hurt him when it went out.
Yeah.
But and what a big game, the guy who put his foot on the line to get it out on the full.
I'm just... look, the Warriors are a dark horse in the competition.
What about, hang on.
They're going all right.
1 second. How good is Leka Halasima? Every time he comes on, he'll score.
Yeah, he's how many has he scored this year? I think 4 or 5.
But they've been off the bench. Bang, score, bang, score.
He's chasing Jacob Little as an impact try scorer off the bench for sure.
But at speed, mate, try and tackle him in the wet. Good luck. Any excuse for Adam Reynolds? He did a couple of mistakes. You got to expect that when you're going for 40-20s and you're putting so much into your kicking game.
Look, he's taking a chance.
He's still got his hammy issues.
Yeah, 1 week they're saying, he's a legend. The next week they want to bag him. But, 3 years on, South Sydney could have had him and he's still out in the field. So they're getting more out of Adam Reynolds than South are out of Latrell Mitchell.
Yeah, missed tackles here though, Scotty. 25 missed tackles to Broncos, 27 to Warriors. So it was fairly even in a lot of the stats.
You'd expect that in the wet weather, though. You're slipping off tackles and that. So, look, less than 30 tackles missed in a game. Look.
But possession rate was a lot more to the Warriors.
Yeah, and that's look, I think 2018 was a low scoreline, I think. They did score 4 tries. Probably the goal kicking made it look a little bit better.
Patrick Carrigan, 53 tackles. Jackson Ford, now he had a big game. He wasn't even supposed to start until a couple of injuries happened. And most run meters, your man Payne has 219. And Tuapiki, geez, I like him. He's tiny, but he's a little bit like Keno Kinney.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
he is. Look,
very fast.
Payne Haas, 200 metres.
What a freak.
He's got a big motor. And then I don't know how many metres Carrigan made, but 50.
Well, he was the top tackler.
So top tackler, work rate, those 2 guys.
He's just a workhorse, isn't he? A donkey in grease up those big mountains. But he's always putting in, you know what I'm saying?
All right, let's get off my...
He's the pack animal.
Sour sack Rabbitohs and get on to the Panthers, who I did tip to beat the lacklustre Roosters. They were bound for a victory, and this was probably the one. And then,
I did ask you. I said, "Why are you tipping Panthers?" Because I thought you were going to cause an upset with the Roosters here.
No, the floodgates opened, really, didn't they? And how good's Blaze Talagi? Look, Dylan Edwards. He couldn't have played any worse the week before, and he's
no. But what did my father say? You know that. What my father said. Always forgive that champion racehorse one bad run. And sometimes you need that first run from a spell, second run from a spell, then you back him third or fourth run from a spell. But champion, he's not going to miss the State of Origin. Not on that effort.
Nathan Cleary? I don't
know. I've got my queries, mate.
No, you can't have two halfbacks in. I don't think New South Wales will go that way. They've got to give Moses the heads up. He's incumbent.
If not, okay, with your Parramatta statement, I will not watch the State of Origin.
Oh, I'll watch the State of Origin if they pick Nathan Cleary, because I reckon that'll be a poor pick. And me being a Queenslander and supporting
I'm talking about New South Wales.
But for New South Wales, look,
it's got to be Moses.
Has to be Moses.
Especially if it keeps that form up. Anyway, so can I give you some stats from the game?
Yep.
The possession rate was a lot more to Panthers, of course. Wow, a lot more. All runs meters a lot more. 400 metres more. The kicks, of course, with Cleary, a lot more than Roosters. Roosters fell away in a lot of departments in this game. 50 now, but here was the linchpin why I tipped Penrith. Mitch Kenny was coming back. He's one of the best defenders in the game, especially for Penrith. He's an absolute work. He's like a Carrigan. 50. Connor Watson, another dog. 53. Let's have a look here. Most run meters, Dylan Edwards, phenomenal, 442.
Can you believe that? 400 metres. It was like a game of touch. I mean,
Sorry, 242, but still, that's a lot for a guy coming back second run from a spell.
Just giving him an extra game. 200 metres.
Yeah,
crikey. Look, it's still, you'd expect that from a quality fullback. Look, Robert Toyer scored for the Roosters sort of in the 56th minute, and there's about 60 minutes.
I like him.
There's 60 minutes in a game for the Roosters. They've been competing for 60 minutes, and against a quality side. You finished at the 60 minute, the 66 and the 72nd minute, and they just rolled in the Panthers. And
here's something you can't do against Penrith. 50 missed tackles. 50. Sorry, my apologies. 50 tackles made more than Penrith. So obviously they haven't held the ball, but an extra 10 missed tackles.
Yeah, I think, look,
you can't do that against an attacking, and they finally got their formula together. Talagi's been not quite right, but they finally got his movements happening with Dylan Edwards, and it sort of complemented each other.
Look, I think the Roosters, like I said, they're going to be down the bottom, struggling as the wooden spoons candidates.
They're going to beat Newcastle,
and look, they're going to win games, but they've got to win games against teams that are having an off day.
Yeah. A Gold Coast.
Otherwise, they're going to get pumped. You know, they beat the Broncos. They lose to the Broncos by 50. They then come back and beat the Broncos and caught the Broncos on an off day. They then come out and get pumped by Penrith, who were hot. So they're either going to get smacked or they're going to just win and be competitive, and that's due to the opposition being on an off day.
One of your biggest fans, or fan you are of, Brian To'o. Would that make it an extra? It's got to make an extra distance.
Yeah, a lot more confidence
going into the into the championship for the defenders.
Yeah,
they're going to win a lot more games once To'o comes back.
They win 3 or 4 games in the next sort of 5 games. They're going to be thereabouts. I still don't know if they've got enough in them to win 5 in a row.
But they probably want. Did Liam Martin play? I didn't hear his name much.
No, I'm not sure.
I don't think. I didn't hear his name. But anyway, because I only sort of caught half of that game.
But it was a good win for the Panthers. But it's dire straits for Sydney when you see the Panthers, the Roosters, the West Tigers, and Parramatta all sitting in the bottom 4.
However, look at the injuries that Queensland have suffered to some of their vital players, mate. So it could be 50-50 here, bro. Can we get on to the next match then? A match that looked like Titans were actually going to cause an upset.
Yeah.
They had an early lead, and but I was confident that Canberra would come back. They barely had the ball for the first 20 minutes, Canberra.
And if you give that sort of ball to the Titans, they're capable of scoring anything. Look, they scored in the 3rd, the 9th, and the 20th. So in the first quarter of the game, they already had scored 3 tries.
Yeah.
And then they got shut out. And then it got to 16-all at half time. So the Raiders got a bit of ball and then they converted because the Titans have very poor defence. I think the difference between the Titans and the Raiders was Hudson Young. And Hudson Young poured another 2 on. I know you like to bank on him in the ATTS. AJ Brimson's always good as well. And another fellow who I put some money on was Jojo Fafita. So I was lucky to get a little bit of value from him. But look,
it was his first run back for a while too, wasn't it?
Yeah. And look, I just think Ethan Strange would have been good value, but the Raiders, they're actually they're like the Sharks at the moment. They're sneaking a little bit under the radar, and that's a good win for the Raiders.
How good is Jermaine Fogarty, who's off contract? If you were Ricky and the boys, would you not try and get him signed?
Yeah, absolutely.
ASAP. Well, his kicking game's phenomenal.
Yeah, no, Jamal Fogarty's good points for them.
He's got those Birdo torpedoes.
Well, he's got the same name as Jamal Osako.
No, but he's got that torpedo kick that puts a lot of these young.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's. But his whole demeanour, it's the way he leads that pack.
Look, I think Fogarty's a great kicker. I just think they're very well balanced, the Raiders at the moment. Ricky's got them pumped well. They've got that little inconsistency in them. But
they only really had that one bad game, remember? Was it against the Cowboys? I can't remember. They had
the Cowboys.
Yeah, it was
Cowboys pumped them.
Yeah, it was that only. I thought they've been very consistent since then as well. But let's have a look at some stats, or we'll spin you out, mate. Missed tackles. 34 Gold Coast, only 18 for Canberra. That's the
well, that shows that they're lucky they weren't 30-0 down at half time. It was only 16-0 when they got a bit of ball.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of tackling.
It was pretty hot up there. They were actually wanting more drinks, and tackles made. They had to do another 27 tackles, the Gold Coast side. So they were gassed.
Yeah, it's another sort of 3 or 4 sets of 6. And, yeah, the Heat played a little bit on it. You would have thought that would have played into the hands of the Titans, but it didn't.
Do you think AJ Brimson's best position is fullback? Where do you think his best position is, Scotty? Because he can be used as a utility, but a lot of people say that he's best at fullback, but we'll
have a pretty good look at it when we just run through quickly the games coming up this week. They've got to play the Titans are playing the Cowboys this week, and let's have a quick look at the Titans' spine in preparation for that game.
Can we whack over this first, because we've still got a lot of important strategies that I want you to talk about. Matty Nicholson, an absolute work animal, 44 tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Varillas, one of your favourites. Most run meters, Jalen de Groot. Hudson Young just lined him up and said, "Stop me if you can, mate." And got him twice, I think.
Well, he didn't say, "Stop me if you can." He looked at him and said, "You won't be able to stop me." So, no, geez, I'd need 6 or 7 shoulder pads just to tackle him. Just to push me into the next week.
Unbelievable. Okay, let's get on to the next match, man, and then we can scout over the matches to come. So the next game was
the Sharks and the Knights.
Oh, right. Okay, you already heard my gripe. The worst thing I've ever seen from the referee, which could have changed the way the game started anyway. But I have to give it to Cronulla. I'm a big fan of William Kennedy, and he was our standout.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fletcher Sharp should have scored 2, unfortunately. What about the James Schiller send-off? That also put a massive amount of pressure on a side that's lacking all their forwards.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, the Sharks were very, very tidy. Look, they hit the right angles on the edge of the ruck. Like Samuel Stone Street.
How good is he?
He's going really good. He's got some tries on the board. Adam Fanua-Blake. Look.
And one of your favourites, Mr. Oregon Kafusi, who you usually tip.
Yep. Look, just the Knights just don't have enough points in them. And the more involved Kalen Ponga gets at the moment, the more frustrated he's going to be. I mean,
he's throwing shocking.
Look, they are. Well, how many people are bagging Kalen Ponga as opposed to Reece Walsh? Now they're bagging the hell out of Reece Walsh and Ponga,
but he's playing injured. Now he's out for a few weeks, Walsh, which might make a big difference. Who's taken his place in this Thursday match?
For the Broncos?
Yeah, the Walsh.
Sol Cobbo.
Cobbo's definitely coming off the wing.
Cobbo's off the wing, going to fullback. And
so who are they putting in his place on the wing?
Dane Mariner. But
so I really get the run, though.
Me personally...
I reckon there's something going on there.
Me personally, I would rather see Dane Mariner playing fullback and Cobbo to the wing. I think he's better at wing. But look, Sharks, pretty impressive, mate. 34-14. It's a 20-point spread. You can't ask for any more than that. I was impressed with Nicholas Hines. I thought Nick Hines was a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more composed, but Newcastle were on the back foot. He had plenty of time to make the decisions. Yeah. And I just think that was to the benefit of the Sharks. And I'm in agreement with you. Will Kennedy has probably been the Sharks' most outstanding player so far this season.
Definitely. Getting on to the stats where it's all going to show up here. Missed tackles. Surprisingly, missed tackles was Cronulla 45, Newcastle 41, but Newcastle can't score. But tackles made. And this is the biggest one I've seen for some time. People have been commending Newcastle in the amount of defence they're doing, but it's only because they haven't been able to hold the freaking ball.
Yep.
419 tackles made. Guess how many Cronulla made?
I would say 270.
294.
Oh, well, close.
Nearly half.
Yep. Close.
That's going to kill you.
Mammoth.
The score should have been even more than what it was, 34-14. It should have been 54-14.
And that's why there's not a great deal of credit. They did what they did, and I did say Newcastle are on the back foot. Nico Hines had plenty of time to make the decisions. That's what those teams do. So, look, again, it's a confidence booster for the Sharks.
You wanted to mention something about one of my favourite players, Sharp. Is he in the right position? Is he in the wrong position?
No, I think.
What are you going to say about
I think
him?
he's in the right position, and I think he's got explosive speed.
Phenomenal. Off the mark.
Off the mark, that first 10, 15 metres, probably quicker. He'd be one of the quickest players over 10 metres, 15 metres, stop-start in the game.
All right, so you're basically saying he's a Steve Morris off the mark.
Yep, 100%.
From the old St George days.
Yep. Now, just talking about Steve Morris, I remember the old St George days. He had a shocker in a weekend game.
Did he?
And I went to Leichhardt Oval. This is a little bit historical moment here, but I went to Leichhardt Oval, and St George were playing South Sydney in the Amco Cup. It was a midweek game.
I love the Amco Cup, right? With Ray Warren.
And was it live? And we went to Leichhardt Oval. They were the days when you caught the train and walked to the fields, and
that's right.
And there was
a whole cattle.
And there was a little cut in the wire fence at the back of the stadium there, right? And all the kids used to creep in through there, so you wouldn't have to pay to get in the ground. And you'd go up, and all the kids were sliding on the cardboard.
It wasn't that much either in those days.
No, it wasn't.
Was it $2.20 for adults?
Petrol's 45 cents a litre. And you got 10 freckles for a cent. But anyway, look, and the kids would be going to the canteen to get that piece of cardboard so they could slide down the back of the stadium on the big grass.
That's right.
Right?
They did that at St George as well.
Yeah, and they had too many reports of injuries from the kids. Now we're politically correct.
Yeah.
But in that game, the St George coach, stand me if I'm corrected, it was either Roy Masters or Harry Bath.
Oh, it might have been Harry Bath.
Right, but Steve Morris was playing. He'd had a shocker the week before, and they dropped him.
Wow!
And he put Steve Morris on the bench.
Oh!
And he sat Steve Morris off for the first half of the game, 40 minutes, and South led by 12 points or something. And this one tries for 3 points.
Yeah.
Steve Morris went out, set up 3 tries, and scored 3 tries himself in the second half, and won the games. And went to his coach and went,
"No."
And got the TV man of the match. That's the first time I've seen a guy get man of the match on TV, on the telecast. He got man of the match for half a game after being sat on his ass, and came out, set up 3 and scored 3, and got man of the match, and went like that to his coach.
But they didn't show it on TV, surely. No. They wouldn't have shown that on TV.
That's a big FU to your coach.
That is.
You want to play without me, then, and that's what Steve Morris did.
I don't think we've seen that attitude in this day and age, apart from the Spencer Lemieux incident recently with JT.
Maybe.
But that was off field
what
stuff.
About the cash man for some help?
Well, he didn't play last week. He's got that hammy at the moment, hasn't he? Christian Tuapolotto, yeah.
Does it happen with the St George players? Remember when Riddell, he did I love the try celebrations when he went back in.
He jumped over the fence and clapped himself.
Well, the other one
so many great stories about Jubilee Oval.
They had St George Illawarra, obviously the Illawarra Steelers and St George. I remember a player for St George who was, you remember Shane McKellar, and he was from the Illawarra. He was super, super quick. He was playing.
Shane McKellar, the name's familiar.
Right? And he was at Cogra Oval one afternoon. And again,
what year are you talking about? 80s?
In the 80s, Shane McKellar. We'll do a bit of research for next week. But Shane McKellar actually took a grubber kick in his own in goal, ran the whole length of the field, blasted everyone, and then did the big salute and everything, and then knocked it on underneath the goal post. And the St George
salute before he put it down.
Yeah, and the St George coach punted him for the following 2 weeks and said, "You're out of first grade until you learn how to put the ball down."
No. Always put the ball. Young kids out there, look at the camera. Always put the ball down with security.
Then celebrate.
So
we've seen it all. But
I was watching one of our earlier podcasts only because of Kennedy. Get Back Kennedy was making me look for the very first episode, and I found a very interesting comment. It might have been episode 3 or episode 4 from you. It was about a second after you said, I'm not tipping Parramatta ever again, right? No, that's all right. But you did say I'm giving them one more chance. But it was the next statement that you said. You said I freaked out because of the biggest story in league this year with the Galvin incident. You said, I'd be surprised if West Tigers have got Luai and Galvin together before the end of November, whatever that cutoff is, the cutoff date. And I nearly fell out of my chair. You picked it before it actually. Did you hear a rumour or something?
Oh, a little bit.
Or did you sense it? Well, you definitely heard it down the track.
I heard it down the track a little bit, that there was some issues there. And then there was a question mark over what players were off contract.
Yeah.
And who's got exemptions and who hasn't in their contracts. Look, I think it's got a lot to do with Lockie Galvin. Again, it's not going to help Coruscant, their captain, when he's getting paid less than Lockie.
So do you think that's behind it as well? Bro?
It's got a lot to do with money. I think the amount of money that players are on should be kept between the players and the clubs. I don't think you can assume that the players on 800. You can assume someone's at 1.2 mil. It's like Dylan for Parramatta going to Newcastle and saying he's the highest paid player ever. I think they should just say, look, he's on a big contract, and I think those disclosures should be kept closed doors. Yeah, should be kept behind. It's just too much infighting. I mean, if I was coming from another club and I was on 180, let's say 180 grand, and then you turned up and you're probably not as experienced as me, but we've had to pay 400 or 500 or 800 grand for you, I'd be thinking I'm on the field same as you, working as hard. And I just think those big contracts and the long contracts are good. I think tell the team there's security. This player's going to be with us for 5 years, but I don't know. I don't think the amount should be disclosed, to be honest. I think it's too much infighting.
But also, I think what's screwing the Tigers as well is the protest that they did online.
Yeah, social media again is
from Luai and Sevilla.
Look, I again, social media. It's
going to bring you down.
It's not the answer for human relationship skills. Let me tell you.
No, and even during the COVID period, people seemed to be, after it was all settled down, and they realised it was more of just a different variant of the flu, right? People didn't want to actually socialise anymore, but they all relied on contacting each other with this. So I think there's a lot to be said about that. But maybe teams should ban social media or guys from doing the social media.
Well, I mean, they're happy to voice in social media, but a lot of these players aren't,
because it causes issues.
I mean, how many times when you're in a football team would the coach haul your ass out and go, mate, I'm going to speak with you on Tuesday. I need you there 15 minutes before training, and we're going to have it out.
Yeah.
And that's relationship skills. That's getting it out in the open. Sometimes they would come to fisticuffs or whatever. I'm not promoting violence here, but look, a push and a shove and get it out of your system and sort it out. Now you've got social media and you've got this and you've got him's 19 years of age, so he's got no social skills. So then they've got some maniac as a manager and he's going to say things and he's in it for one direction of money. The kid just wants to play footy. And Benji and Luai and Coruscant, they, I thought, conducted themselves absolutely brilliantly in the press conferences.
Should have the CEO been there, because he came in with it and basically shut some of the interview down. I thought that was a bit too much.
Yeah, it's disgraceful. And the club, and this has not happened just
bloody
this year.
Richardson, mate.
Hasn't happened this year. It's happened over the last 5 to 10 years.
His poo still stinks.
Yeah,
Richardson, right? Just as much as anyone else.
Yep, and he was at South, yeah.
Well, yeah, but why should he come in and Benji and Coruscant? What the fuck is this?
Look, on a positive side, like I said, that
can I just say something about the bullying though? Because it happened to me at Brighton and Seagulls. I want to bring something up similar. I had a guy that used to call me Galen. Who was Galen from?
Galen was Roddy McDowell from Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, well, this guy used to call me Galen, maybe because I had a little bit longer hair.
It was a TV series, Planet of the Apes.
I was the second row, but what happened, Kevin Weatherall brought the best, nearly an undefeated Arncliffe Scott side he used to play for.
Mm-hmm.
He brought most of them into the Brightons. Now, I was the top forward and fastest forward with Scotty Freestone, and who was the other guy? Scott Thompson, who ended up playing for St George, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Scotty Freestone was with Kinchella for St George. But I had all these. I felt being bullied by the Scots guys who were still in their little clique.
Mm-hmm.
So they're putting crap on me because I wasn't from Arncliffe Scots, but I was the best try scorer with Scotty Freestone. We'd score 3 or 4 tries a match.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had our noses out of joint. So I actually felt a little bit bullied by the hooker who was calling me Galen all the time. And I did feel isolated. So there is a point there for Galvin. It's just been handled the wrong way.
Yeah, it has. But look, we know political correctness has not made us softer, but the meanings of, or to the extent of what we copped in being bullying in them days as opposed to today.
Yeah.
Come on. The game's built on bestiality and all that sort of stuff. And,
hang on.
Look, I just think the game's
brutal force would be better than bestiality.
Well,
I know what you're saying there.
Tribal warfare. It's another thing. People are going to go, oh, war, that's too hard. We don't want it. It's only a game. Let's not, okay, it's only a game. Let's give everyone a medal in the 3 lanes of swimming.
I can't stand that.
All that crap.
No, I can't stand
right? I mean, it's about the big
achievement award.
The biggest, the best, the strongest, the toughest, the most resilient, the fittest.
Well, I think rugby league these days at that professional level, the weights, the hits they do, the amazing brutality, as you said,